A familiar voice cut through the noise around Hajin's street stall. He looked up from behind a black eagle mask and saw Chae Nayun standing on her toes, trying to inspect the weapons laid out before him. Nayun asked the masked merchant how much he wanted for a red crystal spear. Hajin lowered his head, changed his voice, and fought to keep his racing heart from revealing that the seller in front of her was the man she could never forget. She would leave with a powerful weapon, a warm meal, and 5 gold coins without ever learning who had given them to her. To understand how Hajin reached that silent reunion, the story must return to the reward he earned for surviving the hardest tutorial. After clearing the second tutorial in first place, Hajin returned to his private waiting room and received 1,000 tower points along with a performance reward box. The tower gave him 24 hours to recover before the final tutorial began. He opened the level 1 player shop and immediately understood how valuable those points would become. Stat-enhancing items cost nearly everything he had, while an Earth return ticket and the ticket needed to re-enter the tower each cost another 1,000 points. The prices meant the promise he had made to a vandal was already in danger. Hajin had expected to return within a month, but wasting early tower points on travel could delay his progress so badly that he might need at least 2 months instead. The reward box offered something more useful: a skill upgrade scroll, an item upgrade scroll, and 1 unrestricted upgrade scroll. All 3 would disappear within 12 hours, so there was no reason to save them. Hajin had only a short rest period, but the 3 choices in front of him could determine how quickly Extra 7 grew once the real tower began. He began with the ability that had already saved his life at sea. Hajin used the skill scroll on random dice and chose to raise its item limit. The skill could now create items as high as level 4, although every charge would take 30 minutes longer to recover. He used the item scroll on the Yggdrasil leaf. The leaf rose to level 3, strengthened its blessing, and added another small increase to his strength, stamina, vitality, and speed. For the final scroll, Hajin chose something the tower had not expected. Instead of upgrading a skill or object, he asked to upgrade Extra 7's system itself. The normally immediate system waited 3 full seconds before asking whether he was certain. Hajin confirmed, and the level 0 system became level 1, expanding his inventory, enlarging the waiting room, and improving several community functions at once. The broad upgrade produced more value than any ordinary item could have offered. Hajin had not gained raw strength, but he had improved the foundation that would support every future floor. With the system improved, he turned the remaining hours into a private workshop. Hajin rolled random dice for materials and spent 12 hours building a bed from high-quality black wood. The work restored dexterity to grade 8, raised crafting to level 2, and increased several physical statistics by 1/10 of a point. The finished level 3 bed could fully restore vitality in 6 hours and clear the mind of anyone who slept in it. Hajin was exhausted enough to use it immediately, but he still had equipment to prepare. The thought of Jin Sayuk kept him moving. During the next 9 hours, Hajin created a temperature-controlled black hooded cloak, a black eagle mask, and durable leather armor, then acquired the magic power infusion technique from the process. Before the final tutorial began, he checked the public forum and found a post addressed to Extra 7. Nayun and Jungman had been waiting for proof that he was still alive, and the two confirmed that both had entered the highest difficulty. Hajin told his old gaming friend not to die and to follow properly. Then the tower announced the final tutorial, Retaining Prophets, a 10-day test of life inside a functioning society. The next flash of light dropped Extra 7 into a town built to reward trade, punish trust, and expose anyone who could not protect their money. The final tutorial placed Hajin in a medieval fantasy city roughly the size of Yoido. 78 survivors of the hardest difficulty had 10 days to collect at least 1,000 tower points, and every point they earned would remain theirs. Knowing that most residents were scammers, Hajin pulled up his hood and behaved like a local. At the mercenary pub, a bartender demanded 50 points for a glass of gin. Hajin paid 5, and the man silently served it anyway. Then 2 people entered, whose strength approached the master rank outside the tower. Aileen, the master of spirit speech, walked beside Yi Youngha, and Hajin immediately hid his face more carefully. The pair studied the mission board and treated the requirement as simple. They planned to destroy goblin settlements, eliminate bandits, and dismantle illegal gambling operations, believing one day of honest work would be enough. They had not yet understood the real enemy of this tutorial. Strength could complete a mission, but contracts, merchants, thieves, and false prices would decide how much of the reward survived. The danger became immediate when 2 more familiar figures entered the pub. Jane Chukujung entered the pub and immediately recognized Aileen and Yi Youngha from an earlier artifact conflict. 4 pairs of eyes locked across the room, and neither side attempted to hide its hostility. Aileen challenged the newcomers and began forming a command with spirit speech. Hajin reacted before the words could leave her mouth, twisting his wrist and sending 2 streams of concentrated liquor across the room. Yi Youngha blocked 1 stream with his body, but the second entered Eileen's mouth. She coughed, reached for another cup, and accidentally swallowed more alcohol, leaving the restricted spirit speech user unable to speak clearly enough to use her power. While Aileen struggled and Yi tried to calm her, Hajin approached Chiok, signaled for silence, and dragged both troop members out of the pub. A fight inside the city would only bring the vigilante corps down on all of them. In a distant alley, he revealed himself. Chiok was disappointed that the confrontation had ended. Jane merely shrugged, and Hajin asked where Boss had gone before one of the city's scammers found her first. They found her exactly where a sweet-toothed person with no social experience was most vulnerable. Boss stood before a candy stall with a 100-point gold coin in her hand. The merchant's eyes were already shining with greed when Hajin arrived and took the coin away before she could surrender it. The seller claimed each chocolate cost 10 points. Hajin ignored the lie, used Chiok's looming presence, and bought 20 chocolates and 20 candies for a total of 20 points. Boss accepted the sweets with visible relief after more than a month without chocolate. The nearby inn was no better. Its owner demanded 300 points for 1 night, but Hajin forced the price down to 60 and earned the level 1 haggling technique during the exchange. Haggling linked with his charming voice and added a faint persuasive effect to every negotiation. Inside the 4-person room, Hajin divided responsibilities according to what each person could actually do. Jane would exploit her disguises, Boss would be protected from the city's merchants, and Cub would accompany Hajin. Then Hajin asked everyone to invest their remaining money in his first serious plan, gambling. In a city of professional scammers, Hajin intended to become the best scammer at the table. The gambling house was loud, smoky, and filled with men who survived by cheating newcomers. Hajin chose an empty table, sat beside Kiyuk, and allowed the dealer to mistake them for easy prey. Before entering the tower, Hajin had practiced false deals, bottom deals, mucking, and sleight of hand. Combined with dexterity, those techniques made him nearly professional, while his extraordinary luck handled any honest opponents. Whenever a scammer accused Hajin of cheating, Chick only had to stand and smile. The arguments ended before they began, and the pile of chips in front of Extra 7 kept growing. 2 hours were enough. The 1,700 points contributed by the group became 10,200. And Hajin noticed the gambling house's hired expert watching him. Before the owner could arrive with enforcers, he ended the game at the right moment and led Chuk to the exchange counter. Winning was only half the problem. In this city, even the payment for a victory could be another trap. 5 of the banknotes proved him right. The exchange clerk counted 10,200 points and handed over the payment. Most of it entered Hajin's inventory, but 5 banknotes remained in his hand because the tower refused to recognize counterfeit currency. Chuk's expression changed the instant Hajin explained the trick. His muscles tightened, his voice shook the room, and the terrified clerk replaced every false note with valid money before the argument became physical. Back at the inn, Hajin returned the original investments to Boss, Jane, and Chae, then gave each of them an additional 1,000 points. Simply protecting that amount would be enough to clear the final tutorial. He warned them not to relax. Pickpockets in this city could steal money directly from a player's inventory, and almost every stranger was prepared to exploit a moment of carelessness. For the troupe, the requirement had already become easy. Hajin, however, had no intention of stopping at the minimum when tower points themselves would remain useful on every later floor. Elsewhere in the same city, two far stronger heroes were discovering how little power mattered when every contract and price was designed to deceive them. Aileen and Yi Youngha had completed their mission, but the promised reward was already disappearing. Aileen and Yi Youngha destroyed a goblin settlement for a mission advertised at 700 points. The mercenary leader reduced the payment to 300, using injuries among his own men and a buried contract clause as justification. Aileen wanted to force the issue with spirit speech, but the battle had consumed most of her restricted magic power. He dragged her away before anger cost them the small reward they still had. They spent 100 points on a magic power potion from a merchant who looked honest. The item restored almost nothing and carried a chance of food poisoning, but neither hero realized how badly they had been cheated. Their final humiliation arrived at an inn that demanded 150 points for one night. After the reduced mission reward and the useless potion, the price made both of them feel as if their souls had left their bodies. Outside the tower, Aileen could bend people with a sentence. Inside Tutorial City, exhaustion, fine print, and ordinary greed had turned her into exactly the kind of customer every scammer wanted. The next morning, Hajin received a lesson from someone who understood the body better than any merchant understood money. At dawn, a shirtless Chuk found Hajin stretching outside the inn and dismissed ordinary exercise as childish. He claimed that true training began with breathing through the entire body. As Chiuk inhaled and exhaled, every muscle moved with the rhythm of his breath. Beneath the boasting about being Goryeu's greatest warrior, Hajin recognized genuine knowledge and wondered whether stigma could help him imitate the technique. Jane called from an upper window and announced that Boss was hungry and wanted bulgogi rice. Boss loudly denied ever saying it, but Hajin had already decided to cook. At the market, a seller demanded 100 points for onions, mushrooms, and meat. Hajin offered 35, used Chuk's presence as silent pressure, and walked away with everything at that price. Back at the inn, grade 8 dexterity turned the ingredients into a meal for 4. Jane and Tauk praised his cooking, while Boss ate with the relentless efficiency of a machine built to vacuum food. Once everyone was fed, Hajin turned his crafting ability into a business no mission board could match. Hajin decided to sell the red crystal equipment he no longer needed and create new goods from stored materials and random dice. The level 3 Yggdrasil leaf could temporarily raise their effects, turning ordinary handmade equipment into products the city had never seen. He built a stall on a busy road and placed a sign above it. General store, selling everything from weapons and armor to spices and fruit. Whenever another player approached, he covered himself with the black mask and hood. 5 local thugs arrived before Hajin could finish arranging the merchandise. Then their supposed boss appeared, gave Hajin permission to sell, and ordered the men to apologize by buying something from him. The intimidating gang leader was Jane in disguise. Her performance turned the thugs into Hajin's first customers, and a blessed leather armor that appeared close to level 4 triggered an auction. The armor sold for 3,000 points. More residents crowded around the stall. Chu caught anyone who tried to steal, and Hajin's supply of level 3 goods began converting directly into tower wealth. Then, one soft, familiar voice reached him through the shouting customers. Every other sound in the street seemed to disappear. The customer forcing her way toward the front was Chae Nayun. Chae Nayun stepped into view and asked what was happening. Hajin's heart seemed to stop. Her hair was still short and dyed black, and the voice he remembered had not changed at all. The hood and eagle mask protected his identity, but he lowered his head anyway. Nayun asked whether he carried a red crystal sword, then settled for the spear displayed on the cloth. Hajin quoted 250 points. Nayun admitted she only had 150, producing a bargain with no technique, logic, or leverage behind it. He accepted immediately. Along with the spear, Hajin handed her a leather pouch containing the lunch he had prepared, and 5 gold coins worth 500 points. Nayun tried to reject the bonus and asked him to lower the price by another 50 points instead. Hajin forgot his disguised manners long enough to ask whether she was insane, and she left believing she had outsmarted an NPC merchant. Hajin watched her light steps until another customer blocked his view. When the man complained that the red crystal axe cost far more than Nayun's spear, Hajin raised the price again every time he protested. Nayun only discovered the full value of the transaction after sitting on a nearby bench. On a nearby bench, Nayun checked the spear and discovered that its level 3 blessing raised every effect. She hugged the half-level 3 weapon with delight, convinced that she had cheated the merchant rather than the other way around. Then she opened the leather pouch. A warm lunchbox rested inside beside 5 gold coins worth 500 points, more than 3 times the money she had possessed before the purchase. Greed tempted her for only a moment. Nayun forced herself to stand and return to the stall, certain the masked merchant had accidentally mixed his day's earnings into her bag. Hajin refused to take the coins back and looked toward Jiuk for help. Jiuk stepped forward, called Nayun an idiot, and told her to leave instead of arguing over what she had received. Intimidation was the wrong strategy. Nayun kicked Jiuk hard in the calf, raised her middle finger, and escaped through the crowd while his furious shouting followed her down the street. The comedy ended after sunset, when the city became quiet enough for Nayun's buried memories to return. By nightfall, Nayun had completed a mission advertised at 500 points, but received only 200. After paying the inn, she had 125 points left and lay awake alone in an empty room. Rain began tapping against the city. Without exhaustion to silence her thoughts and without the medicine she normally took, old memories returned with a crushing headache, ringing ears, and the same unanswered question: if Hajin had killed her brother, why had he done it? The door opened, and for one terrible moment, she saw Kim Hajin entering the room. Nayun reached for the spear beside her bed, but the hallucination broke when the man asked why she was sitting there like a ghost. It was Shin Jong-hak, covered in dirt after his own work. The two had found each other by chance at the mercenary pub and agreed to share the room because neither wanted to waste money. Nayun showed him the spear and the 5 coins she had tried to return. She also claimed the unfinished lunch did not suit her taste, hiding the truth that the incident 3 years earlier had taken away her sense of taste entirely. When she forced a broad smile, Shin quietly told her to stop, because watching it hurt him. Nayun threatened him with a spear, mocked his empty wallet, then dragged him onto the bed and chose the floor for herself because she had slept there the night before. The same rain reached Hajin after he closed the street stall. Hajin closed the stall and returned to the shared room while rain continued outside. Boss sat cross-legged in a black tank top and shorts, rebuilding her restricted statistics through meditation, and noticed immediately that something was wrong with him. Before lying down, Hajin rolled 2 random dice for goods to sell the next day. They became level 4 krill dragon leather and the same enormous mango that had once saved him from the island devourer. Boss stared at the mango, denied being hungry, and then abandoned the subject to ask why Hajin looked so low. He admitted only that rainy days made him depressed, refusing to open the older grief and guilt underneath. Boss reported that her magic power had reached 3.5 and her other statistics had entered the 2-point range. Hajin called her a max-level shut-in. Boss declared herself wounded and demanded the mango as compensation, but he stored it before she could take it. For the rest of the 10-day tutorial, Hajin kept crafting and selling while Boss trained. He sacrificed personal stat growth for money and eventually accumulated more than 20,000 points. enough to purchase the one hidden object he had entered the city to obtain. On the final day, he carried those points to a ruined shop at the edge of town. The ruined general goods shop contained ordinary level 2 items and one egg marked only with question marks. Its owner demanded 40,000 points, but Hajin knew no normal challenger could earn that amount in 10 days and offered 20,000 instead. He identified it according to the tower's strange recorded setting as an eagle egg, impressed the shopkeeper with both his knowledge and his fortune, and completed the purchase. The egg came from the line of Muninn, a bird connected to Odin, although even Hajin did not know what would eventually hatch. Outside the city, Aileen and Yi Young-ha had survived 10 days of humiliation to save 2,000 points. They were proud of the result and had begun to suspect that the masked man from the pub was Black Lotus. Then the tower revealed a hidden reward. The 5 most profitable challengers would receive all their earnings again as a bonus. Phantom Thief ranked second with 7,800 points, while Extra 7 stood first with 21,300. Aileen stared at the impossible gap and demanded to know who Extra 7 was. Hajin returned to his waiting room, received another 21,300 points, and carefully tucked the 20,000-point egg beneath the blanket of his handmade bed. The black admission ticket also allowed him to retrieve 3 deposited items: ether, the Desert Eagle, and the smartwatch linked to his laptop. The handgun had limited ammunition inside the tower, but Hajin selected it for one reason alone. He intended to kill Jin Sayu. Tutorial City rewarded more than strength. Hajin dominated it through preparation, crafting, luck, deception, and the ability to understand exactly how greed moved both players and NPCs. Yet the most important encounter earned him no points. Chae Nayun left with his spear, his food, and his money, while the mask between them preserved every unanswered wound from 3 years earlier. Now the tutorials were over. Extra 7 had a divine egg, a fortune in tower points, and 3 restored tools from Earth, and the first person he planned to use them against was Jin Sayuk.